The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
There are no moral victories, but wait a minute. They're not supposed to be a but for moral victories. Yeah, but. And though the Commanders are on a 7-game losing streak, somehow this doesn't feel like 7-game losing streaks of Christmas past. Somehow there's some optimism here. I don't know what to say about it other than it shouldn't be happening, but it's happening. And injuries have had a lot to do with what the Commanders have done this year. And luck has played a role. And, yeah, luck is the residue of design, I guess. But it's a strange feeling as we roll into December here. Unlike Decembers of years gone by where, a record of 3-9 was kind of the cost of doing business during the Dan Snyder era. But because Dan Snyder is gone, this 3-9 doesn't feel that way, even coming off the magical season of last year. There is the feel of rebound that can happen. And look at what happened last night. The New England Patriots, after the Belichick era ended, and then the hand-picked replacement flamed out, you went, oh, God, think of the walk in the desert that Bob Kraft is going to have. And he hires the coach that he really wanted to hire after he pushed Belichick out the door. But because there was the coach in waiting, he had to wait a year, and he gets a guy who's totally turned things around. Now, having a quarterback certainly helps. But they had the quarterback last year. He was a rookie last year, and he showed a lot of promise, but now he's turning into an MVP candidate. And we had a game last night where that was on full display against an absolute train wreck of a team. And the Giants are a mess, symbolized by, and this is almost at the level of Gus Frerotte banging his head into the wall after scoring a touchdown against the Giants in 1997, I believe. Yeah, 1997. Which was the only score of the game for Washington. They wound up with the most horrific 7-7 tie I have ever seen. Just an awful game. And Gus banging his head into the newly padded wall at brand new FedEx Field. I think it was only like the second or third game played there, the night game against the Giants. Maybe it was a little later than that, but it was the first season of FedEx Field. And that was symbolic of what that team was and what the organization was pre-Dan Snyder. Let's be fair about that, too. That was before Snyder bought the team in 1999, but there had been a huge decline after the exit of Joe Gibbs won after the 1992 season, and the Norv Turner rebuilding wasn't really working out the way that people had hoped. They had finished the year before 9-7, and they missed the playoffs, and then this was the year that they were supposed to step up. They finished 8-7-1, and with the tie, they managed to keep themselves out of the playoff. But there was a field goal attempt by Younghoe Koo. Younghoe Koo was a really good kicker for a number of years with the Atlanta Falcons, and like a lot of kickers, they turn into like spoiled milk. At some point, you have to throw them out. And so Koo was cut this year by the Falcons. He winds up with the Giants, which was kind of cool for him because he grew up in New Jersey actually playing soccer. And he winds up with the Giants, who are a mess, and he's still with them. I don't know whether he'll still be with them after today, but last night he attempted a field goal, and I've been watching pro football for over 60 years. I can't remember seeing anything like this. He I want to say stubbed his toe. He was attempting a field goal on the artificial turf that they have there in New England, and the foot never reached the football. He hit it into the turf, and it didn't go any further, and the holder wound up jumping on it and falling on the ball for a loss. That is symbolic of where the Giants are. But let's not discount the Patriots. The Patriots have won, 10 straight, and this is remarkable to me. They have a bye week coming up. But on the 14th of December, they play the Buffalo Bills. If they beat the Bills, they will clinch the division. Now, if you said going into the season, oh, yeah, that division will be clinched by mid-December, you would have said, sure, the Bills are going to lock it up. They lock it up every year. Why wouldn't they? The rest of the division isn't that good. So New England Patriots are sitting on something that is absolutely incredible with a second-year quarterback who is in the MVP conversation and played at that level last night. He was 24 of 31 for 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the Patriots are the best team record-wise in the NFL at 11-2. How is this happening? Buck and Aikman do their usual chat with Scott Van Pelt after every Monday night game, and this was Joe Buck leading off, looking at what he saw on the field in Foxborough and what these 11-2 Patriots look like.
Man, they are physical. I think that's the word that jumps into my mind. I think defensively, we talked all night about Drake May, and why wouldn't you? You have to. The young man is phenomenal. He's only 23 years old. Humble guy, very mature, comes from that sports family, but you see what Vrabel's doing. That's more of that touchy-feely stuff, and he's got a good thing going here. But that defense, they were out for it tonight, and they're having fun. They've taken on the kind of the personality of their head coach. That they cannot be fun to play against. I promise you that. And I just think in all 3 phases, this was a dominant New England Patriots team.
Troy, you praised the accuracy of May pregame, and we saw that in a couple of the highlights that we just showed. In terms of the other character traits that you hope to see out of truly great franchise quarterbacks, I imagine it's a long list, but where else do you go after the accuracy, which I know catches your eye?
Well, I think he's got tremendous poise in the pocket, first of all. He never gets rattled. He was brought up the right way. You can tell he's been well coached. Certainly has helped having Josh McDaniels. But he's got a good feel for where he needs to go with the football. He gets through progressions. He's helping out his tackles. I just think he's playing the game at a really high level. And for him to be just in his second year is really impressive. They did a great job. And as we talked about on Countdown, Scott, I thought he played exceptionally well last year as a rookie as well, but the supporting cast this year is just so much better. So to take a guy who was pretty well prepared to come in and play well in this league, and then just get Josh McDaniels in here that has just taken it to another level, but to get really good players around him, it's a real credit to the organization for doing that for a young player. And the defense, like Joe said, I mean, this is a complete team. They're playing great special teams, great defense. All of that helps a young quarterback, and we've seen Drake May benefit from it all.
Scott, I know you want to jump in, but I just watching that video, are these guys having any fun right now? I mean, this is different around here, and different than he is a different head coach, I think, now even than when he was in Tennessee, but far different with what he's doing in the tunnel there than we've seen here in Foxborough. I totally agree, and that was the last thing I was going to ask you, Joe. We're like an old married couple. You can read my mind. You can read my mind down here. I've been a guy that, like you, I've known Vrabel going back to his playing days, so I always had an admiration for sort of who he was. But I think if people viewed him as some sort of meathead or whatever, you're totally missing it. He has an ability to connect with his guys in a genuine way, and they are responding to it, and you are seeing it play out in real time here. I just think that they're manifesting sort of who he always was as a player, but I'm amazed that it's happened this quickly. Are you? Yeah, I think I'm not amazed, but that's the wrong word. But I'm impressed. I'll say that because, like Carlton Davis said during the week, Mike Vrabel has told his players, don't take yourselves too seriously. I mean, think about that. Don't take yourselves too seriously. And typically you hear, get in your playbook and grind away and, do it the right way and all that. They're doing all that, but they're having fun while they're doing it. And, you probably know Mike. He knows Mike. I've been around Mike socially, seen him out in Tahoe. He is a funny, fun-loving guy. He's a very serious head coach. But I think these guys are picking up more on the fun from Mike Vrabel, and they're turning in great performances. They want to play for him.
Well, when you win part of that, Scott, I would tell you, he's tough at his core. For sure. He can be fun, but at his core, he's as tough as they come. He was that way as a player, and his teams are tough, and that's what's going to carry him.
The usual chat with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman after the Monday night games, the win last night for the Patriots to make them 11-2, the 33-15 win over the New York Giants. And you may have heard them reference a couple of times video. What they were showing as they were talking was Mike Vrabel bro-hugging all his players. A couple of them he chest bumped, and he's, kind of on the border age limit for that, Certain coaches of certain age can't do that anymore, but he kind of gets away with it. He still has the feel of a player in him, even though he's way too old to play, and he retired long before any of these guys were aware that he was a key player on the Patriots dynasty. But it's an interesting look when you see that, and it works for him. He's pulling it off, and he's a guy who's coached in college too. So maybe there's an element of that as well, that these guys are not that far removed from college. So you do the rah-rah stuff, and you can actually get out on the field with a pad and bump players, like in practice and so forth. So that's it's working for him. Whatever he's doing is working, and at some point it stopped working in Tennessee. I'm sure they have regrets, but Tennessee fired him. Their loss is New England's gain, and they're back in the saddle again with a quarterback who, it's way too early to say Brady. He's still 7 rings short. I get all that. But this transition of quarterbacks in a relative short period of time, let's see, Brady would have played his last season in New England, if I'm not mistaken, 2019. So this is year 2 in 2025. So basically a 4 or 5 year gap where you're looking for a quarterback, but they got one. And that's really a big part of the game, maybe the biggest part of the game, which is why, as you watch the Commanders unravel this year, and I say unravel just record-wise, they haven't unraveled in the locker room, but you still have 5, and 5 may play this week. He'll play, I think, at some point this season, and next season, hopefully he stays healthy, and they can be back in the mix next year, as teams do. Again, New England, terrible last year. Second straight year, awful. And then they get to the point now where they could have a first-round bye in the playoffs in the AFC. It's crazy. Speaking of Joe Buck, by the way, he did something yesterday that many of us in the broadcast business have done. We just haven't done it at the level that he did it yesterday in 2 different places. He hosted Good Morning America yesterday in New York, and then hopped on a plane and did the game in Foxborough last night. Now, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. I don't know if he took a private plane, doesn't say, but even if he flew, was a short flight from New York to Boston, and I'm sure he was picked up and driven to a hotel where he could rest and shower and all that and get ready for the game. But the point being is he wanted to do it, and he doesn't need to do it. And this is a great lesson for anybody who wants to do this. You have to not only be willing to do a lot of things that are asked of you, but you have to really want to do them and seek out opportunities like this. Not everything he's done away from sports has been a success. You may remember, it's maybe been 10 years, maybe longer, Joe Buck attempted to host a David Letterman type of show without the censors on HBO, and it was god-awful. It was terrible. I think they had contracted for maybe 6 or 7 episodes, and they only did about 3 of them. It was terrible. But as a play-by-play guy, he's unparalleled. He stopped doing baseball for the most part when he went from Fox to ESPN. But there's nobody better doing football, pro football. Mike Tirico's on his level, Ian Eagle, Jim Nance. There are a few that are at that level, but nobody's better than Joe Buck. And Joe Buck wanted to do Good Morning America. He'd been expressing interest in doing it. He looked at his schedule and said, yeah, this will work out well. Plus, it'll be a nice promo because the game is also on ABC as well as ESPN. So let's do it. He said it was a blast. He talked to USA Today about it last night before the game started in Foxborough. And he said, people go, well, why would you want to do that? He said, it's good for me. It's good for my brain. It's good for what? I don't know, just kind of being challenged. It's a long day, but so what? People who work a heck of a lot harder in the real world than getting up and being on TV with makeup on your face. I'm not downplaying it, but that's kind of what I saw my dad do when I was a little kid. And yes, his dad grew up in an era of broadcasting where he may have done morning drive sports reports on KMOX and also did Cardinals games at night and did it on very little sleep because the adrenaline of doing something you love to do fuels you to do that. And Joe Buck grew up seeing that and had opportunities. Let's be fair. He had opportunities that most people don't have because of his name. He got the chances very early on in his career to do some high-level stuff, But there have been other sons of who have gotten opportunities and haven't seized them the way that he did, the way that Noah Eagle has as the son of Ian Eagle, the way that Kenny Albert has as the son of Marv Albert. And Marv, by the way, Marv was a machine. Marv was doing the nightly sports on WNBC in New York and then doing a Knicks game and then hopping on a plane to the next site and, on and on and on. He did all kinds of different things. And the money wasn't what it is now. He made a nice living for sure. But, these contracts that you hear about where Joe Buck is probably making $1 million a game. I mean, he's not doing a side hustle for Good Morning America for the money. But to see him do that, I think, is impressive. And I think it's a great lesson for anybody who is looking to get into what is now a shrinking business. It's hard to do, but there are still people who are needed to do it. And to think that he woke up at 4:30 in the morning, makes it into the studio. He downplayed, how tough it is, his great operation. All he basically had to do was throw to the weather. Okay, but he did it well, and then hopped on a plane after he got off at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 8:20 at night, he's doing a football game that lasted till close to midnight. So this also brings up the uproar about what Erin Andrews said on a podcast that she does with Carissa Thompson. And she said something to the effect of, well, you have to give up your weekends, you have to give up holidays if you want to do this. And whenever something like that is said, it goes viral. It's not like she put out a tweet or something on Facebook, oh, woe is me, look at my life, it's so tough. Oh, she was just explaining the realities of it. And so people seized on it, and they said, oh, God, look at this woman. She makes a lot of money, and she has this dream job of covering professional football, and the games are only once a week. What is she complaining about? No, she wasn't complaining. She was explaining what the life is. And I've had this in my career, young people who have been interested in getting into this business, and I say, well, for example, when I was doing the pre and the post game show for the then Redskins, and it was on Thanksgiving, my family went to Thanksgiving in Baltimore, and I did the shows in the studio and ate Chinese food. And did I think, oh my God, my life is so awful because I have to do this? No, I get to do it. It was great. I love doing what I do, and I loved it then. I love it now. And if I have to give up Thanksgiving dinner to eat Chinese and cover a game again, I'll do it. That's not that big a deal. So when people look at Joe Buck and they go, oh, what a long day he had. Yes, he did. He chose to do it. Didn't need to do it. Chose to do it. And I think this is typical of what you see in the people who are very, very successful doing this. I think Mike Tirico, I may be wrong about this, but I believe that he's going to do the Super Bowl and then do Olympic coverage in the same day for NBC. And, Mike's the kind of guy, he can just cruise into a studio, sit down, put on the what they call IFB. That's how you get the sound of the producer in your ear, and just drive. He's that good. And there are certain people who are at that level, and Joe Buck is one of them, and doing Good Morning America in the morning and a football game at night. I think if you watch closely, you didn't think, oh, God, this guy sounds really tired. He shouldn't be doing a morning television show. No, he got to do a morning television show, wanted to do that, wanted to do something else, wanted to expand his brain, as he put it. So I think that's cool, and hats off to Joe Buck for doing that. All right, coming up, Dan Quinn talked yesterday about where this team is, riding this 7-game losing streak, and acknowledged that there are no moral victories, but we'll get to that, and what he says about the possibility of Jayden Daniels playing on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Haven't hit it yet, but I'm going to sprinkle in over the next hour and a half quite a bit on this Lane Kiffin story. And you say, well, that's a 2-day-old story. We don't live in Oxford, Mississippi, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yeah, I know that. I know this is Washington, D.C., and I know we spend most of our time talking about the Commanders and other issues that involve D.C. sports as much as we can. But there are so many layers to this story, and it really needs to be made into a series like Succession. I don't know if you watched that on HBO, but I thought that was terrific. I was totally wrapped up in that, and I think a lot of people were for a period of time, whatever it was. And it was really well done. And it talked about mainly, greed, ego, backstabbing, all that. And this has so many different parts of that, with the central character, the Logan Roy of college football, and that's Lane Kiffin. The world is revolving around Lane Kiffin now, and it's crazy. It's just nuts, but it's a great story. And I think this is what I've always felt about whatever you're doing in broadcasting, whether it's radio or TV. But the great Don Hewitt, who was the producer of 60 Minutes for probably 40 years, he created the show, and he got the correspondence. It was his baby. And what he would tell his correspondents is, tell me a story. And that's what this is. This is an amazing story. And we'll get to all the juicy details of it coming up. But first, I wanted to get to what Dan Quinn said yesterday at his usual Monday news conference. Nothing really earth-shattering. I'll get to the Jayden Daniels status in just a moment. But as he often does, he has sort of a prepared statement to give to the reporters. And yesterday it was what he had told the players.
For us, the scars are hard, but the lessons they're deep. And one thing I like, man, our team showed a lot of resilience and a lot of fight. Excellent. And I would say we recaptured some of that, and that was needed. I felt the energy they displayed for one another. I felt it on the field, on the sideline. It was there all night, and that was a good deal. These moments matter. These close fights matter. Like afterwards in the locker room, man, this was like two teams throwing blow back and forth to one another, and those are the fights that matter. You love being in them. And I thought, although the 2-point conversion didn't go our way, a lot of the other winning time moments did, and I thought that was a big part. In this game, we played some complimentary football, hit some punt, had some field position, so there were some things about it that I like, not to be confused. Hate the result. Yeah, the result was bad, and again, we go back to the old cliche that there are no moral victories, or the better quote, which I like, from Bill Parcells, no medals for trying. But there is a feel here, and Tom Lovero's got an interesting look at that today in his column in the Washington Times. And we often get to this point in December when the team has a terrible record. Lose as many as they can so they can get a good draft pick. The Jayden dynamic changes that, I think. I mean, you're not so desperate to get a quarterback anymore. Yeah, you want to improve the roster, and the higher you pick in the draft, the better the chance you have of impact players. But the most important impact player is on this roster. Okay, he's hurt a lot this year. I don't think that's going to be the story of his career. I don't. I think he's going to learn how to protect himself better, and I think that in most cases we'll get a full season out of him, and that could go on for a decade or more. I believe that's going to be the case, because I think he's really smart. I think he knows what he's doing. He's not a narcissist like Robert Griffin III, and that was really a big part of the problem with him. He points out in his column about how Dan Quinn probably really wanted to win this game. I'd forgotten about this, but in 2022, the Broncos interviewed Quinn to be their head coach. This is after he'd been fired in Atlanta, and they wanted him to replace Vic Fangio. Instead, they hired Nathaniel Hackett, who turned out to be a disaster. He was fired before the season was over. And then Quinn interviewed for the job in 2023, but pulled out when he realized they were going to hire Sean Payton, which is turning out to be an excellent hire for them. But this is what he writes about moral victories and accumulating losses to improve your draft position. He says, taking solace in a loss has its dangers. For this franchise, it seemed like a measurement standard they had left behind. But having receiver Terry McLaurin, 7 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown, who has missed 7 games this season, and safety Will Harris, who was on the field for the first time since Washington's 41-24 win over Las Vegas September 21st, it seemed to have an impact for reason for optimism in a season destroyed by injuries. The Commanders rolled up 419 yards. That's their highest total this season. And he writes his last paragraph, a win over the Vikings would damage Washington's draft standing for 2026. But like valiant losses, those goals often measure losing franchises. The Commanders need to leave those standards behind. And I agree with that. Everybody jumps on one side of the aisle at this time of year. Oh, yeah, lose out. Make sure you get the highest draft pick possible.
And the other side says, no, you're establishing culture here. You're only one season removed from this magical year. See teams like the Patriots who can get back to that quickly. The Colts are fading a little bit now, but they're still going to be a factor in the AFC. Write it out. And I think that's very sound advice, I believe. This is the question that everybody wants to know going into this game that Jayden Daniels hurt himself about a month ago. I think it was exactly a month ago, November 2nd. And is this the game coming up against the Vikings on Sunday that he'll be ready to go?
He's still going through that process of the functional testing. And so I'll have a better sense as we go through the week, probably in terms of like the game, Tom. It'll be all the way till Friday, quite honestly, because the practice portions, that'll be ongoing in terms of like the evaluation and the movements and the contact. So he has not been for all the way through all the testing yet, Tom.
Then, if he's able to come back and it kind of closes the chapter on Marcus's stint here as starter, what have you learned about him that maybe you didn't know coming into this season?
Man, that's a good question. I've known the leadership, but yesterday, like when it's time to will the team to go do that, that's really what I saw. I thought, the play passes and, using his arm, using his legs to go, Tom, I thought that came through. But in some of the winning time moments, just throwing absolute dimes. I thought it was like a warrior performance at quarterback. And sometimes those are hits and you stay in, you make them. But I had known who the leader was, but that solidified, just an absolute, man, like put it on me kind of performance to go find a way.
So Jayden's still not cleared for contact. We don't know whether he's going to play Sunday. But here's the thing about Marcus Mariota. He's not the reason they lost that game. Yeah, he threw a really bad interception. And had he put more arc on the ball on that pass to Jeremy McNichol, which could have won the game on the 2-point conversion, they would have won the game. But he played his butt off. I mean, he made some incredible plays in that game. And I think that's influencing the line here. The word yesterday is that J.J. McCarthy is going to be ready to play, which is a good thing, because a good thing for Minnesota anyway, maybe not for Washington. But Max Brosmer was horrific in Seattle on Sunday, throwing 4 interceptions, just god-awful in that game, 126 yards, 4 interceptions. He was sacked 4 times. So getting J.J. McCarthy, who hasn't been great shakes for them either, but having him back, I thought would influence the line. It's still a 1.5 in favor of Washington. They're actually road favorites in Minnesota, despite losing 7 straight games. They're road favorites against a Vikings team, which is getting its starting quarterback back. And I think that Marcus Mariota has a lot to do with it. Would you like to see Jayden on the field? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I also believe that if he's not fully healthy, they'll go with Mariota again, and I think they'll have a really good chance to win the game, whether J.J. McCarthy plays or not. As for moving forward here with a record that hasn't officially eliminated them from the playoffs, but realistically has, here's Quinn on that.
You asked any player or coach, there's no moral victory here. There's not, a way to go. But what I did see, were we better than the team a week before? And that was the challenge, Scott, to say, can we level it up, from the team that played Miami and Madrid? And I said, in 1 week's time, we did that. We found things to improve upon. We found spaces to go, and that's the challenge, man. Can we go dig in for that again? And if we can, that's the goal, man. Can we stack and get better and better? And so that's what we'll dig on these 5 weeks. That's, where we're trying to go for it, man. I loved being in this fight the whole way through. You could feel the energy, sideline, all the way through. It felt more complimentary. We didn't make it on offense. We punted. We put them back. We, got a stop, got field position. Those were things that felt more like we recaptured. And I think that's an important piece, Scott. So maybe that's some of those things are what I would take from it. Ultimately, we got to go win it. But I did feel like it was a step in the right directions on some of those things.
And you obviously have been juggling a couple of hats the last couple of weeks, second straight game, calling the defensive plays, also being the head coach. Have you found your rhythm? Have you found your groove? How have you felt kind of juggling both hats?
It definitely took into the second week. I feel much more settled in week 2, the week 1 version, and then adding the trip, to Spain. I thought all of that space with the guys, it took me probably till game day till I felt, comfortable in that. And then this week, we found a great structure. Joe's been incredibly supportive, Scott, to help and assist, and we kind of found our rhythm together quickly. We had plenty of experience doing that before together, and so I certainly appreciated him stepping into that space with me as well. So it took probably 2 weeks, Scott, to finally capture the flow and the rhythm of it, team meetings, defensive meetings, that type of thing. But I feel in a good space today.
So that leads us to the question, with Quinn talking about how comfortable he is calling the defensive plays. Might he do it next year? The Joe he's referring to, of course, is Joe Witt Jr., who has been demoted from defensive coordinator to whatever he is now, and he advises, I guess, from the press box on plays, but he's not going to be back as defensive coordinator next year. And this is pretty much confirmed here by Dan Quinn, that Joe Witt's tenure in Washington will end when the season is over. And then the question becomes, does Dan Quinn call the defensive signals next year?
Yeah, there's a possibility of that. As we're going through it, I'm finding a battle rhythm to go. So I'm not sure where I'm at on that yet, Ben. I haven't, discussed or gone down that road too far yet. But, I would say that's a possibility.
If that happens, that would be a change in the philosophy he presented when he was hired as the head coach almost 2 years ago. He said he had learned some things when he was coaching the Falcons not to bite off too much, that it was much more important to delegate. So if he is the defensive play caller next year, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because we've seen against a not good team, the Dolphins, that he was effective doing that, and against a very good team, a team that's won now 9 straight, they almost pulled off an upset on Sunday night. So I got no problem with Dan Quinn calling the defensive signals, but if that is the case, it's a shift in philosophy from someone who has been there, done that before with the Falcons team going to the Super Bowl, and saying he had learned from that. If you know the story that after he was fired, he hired Laura Oakman, who does sideline reporting, and I guess she's got another business, but she was to talk to former players, people who he had worked with, people he had coached against, and he wanted a report on things that he had done wrong so he could learn from them. And maybe that was one of them. You bit off too much when you were the coach of the Falcons. So if he's back next year, he will be back next year as head coach, of course. But if he's back next year as the defensive play caller as well, what does that mean in his philosophy? What does that mean long-term as to how he does things here? Look, the greatest era of Washington football was with the head coach calling the offensive plays. Joe Gibbs did not have an offensive coordinator, except maybe he did it in his last stint, and that didn't work out. That was the guy who came up with the 700-page playbook. Remember that? And they went 6-10. So it always worked out better when Coach Gibbs was calling the plays, especially the first time around. But Dan Quinn back as the defensive play caller, what does that mean for next year? He hasn't decided on it yet, but it would have been interesting had he said, oh, no, this is just for now. I realize I have to be in charge of the whole operation. Maybe it was he didn't want to really throw Joe Witt further under the bus. That could have been also like, hey, I had to get rid of him. He stunk and I took it over. But he is leaving open the possibility of being the defensive play caller next year. We said this about this season. I think a lot of people nationally said it. Oh, yeah, well, look at Washington last year. Look at all those one-score games they had. Look at all the games they won at the end. Look at how the bounces went their way, including the Hail Mary game against the Bears, et cetera. And so that was luck. Anecdotally, it's luck. But very good story by Tom Shad in the Washington Post. He covers the team as a beat reporter. I guess he replaced Nikki Javala when she went to The Athletic. And he's got a story about luck with some analytics in this. And he points out that 3 of the losses have come by a combined 5 points, with each realistically boiling down to one mistake. The ill-timed fumble by Jayden Daniels against Chicago, which has ignited this losing streak. The missed game-winning field goal by Matt Gay against Miami and Madrid, and the batted ball and the 2-point conversion on Sunday night. He says Washington has been outclassed and beaten emphatically in 5 games. It has also gone 0-4 in one-score games that has been decimated by injuries. 22 players have missed a game because of injury, and 7 of the Week 1 starters had a stint on injured reserve. Starting quarterback Jayden Daniels, running back Austin Eckler, and wide receivers Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown have missed a combined 33 games. Of course, Eckler's out for the year with the torn Achilles. Here's the data, and it's done by NFL data scientists. NFL is so wealthy, they have data scientists. NFL data scientist Tom Bliss attempted to measure some of these moments in what has been dubbed a luck dashboard. He tracks 4 types of plays: dropped interceptions, dropped passes, missed field goals and extra points, and fumble recoveries, and calculates their cumulative impact on each team's winning percentage. Last year, by his metrics, Washington was by far the luckiest team in the NFL. We didn't need metrics to figure that out, right? This year, as of yesterday, the Commanders have been the second most unlucky. Only the Jets have fared worse. You might say, well, the Jets stink anyway. Well, the Commanders weren't supposed to stink, but they stink because of injuries, and they stink because, as he points out here, some luck. Bliss wrote in an email this week, despite the Commanders' poor luck this season, the 4 most impactful plays of Sunday night's game, per his data, benefited them. They were dropped interceptions or passes by the Broncos, and the 4th was Mariota's attempted pitch to tight end John Bates, which went down as a recovered fumble. Bliss's data does not account for batted or tipped balls. So, according to, again, his metrics, this was the luckiest team in the NFL by far last year, and we know that. I was at the Hail Mary game. Damn, I know that. But it is also this year the second most unluckiest, only ahead of the Jets, who, are their own worst enemy most of the time anyway. So, that's the pendulum swing that a lot of people looked at going into this season. Yeah, the 12-5 record was with a lot of good fortune, including health. And this year, as it points out, all the injuries that they've had and the fact that the lucky bounces are bouncing the other way for them. Really good story, well written and well researched. I think that points out a lot of things that have happened this season. All right, I told you we would spend some time on the Lane Kiffin story, and that includes the exclusive interview that Marty Smith got from him just as Lane Kiffin was about to board the plane and head off to Baton Rouge after an incredible series of events in Oxford, which included what was reported to be sort of a hostage situation, like either you let me coach the team through the playoffs or I'm taking all my assistants with me, and I'm giving them an ultimatum. Either if you don't go now, you can't go at all. He later denied that. And then it included the staff putting a clothes rack, which included Kiffin's clothes, out on the street. That's how crazy it got. I'm telling you, it's got elements of Succession. It's all you need is Logan Roy. No, just crazy. We'll get to that coming up. But how in fact Marty Smith landed his exclusive. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
So as the wild Lane Kiffin exit was unfolding on Sunday, it was supposed to happen Saturday. We're supposed to find out Saturday what he was going to do. As he was getting ready to exit from Oxford, Mississippi, and head off to Baton Rouge to coach at LSU, where he's all happy and everybody's thrilled and the governor's involved, and it's just great that Lane Kiffin has gone to LSU. Apparently was not his first choice. There is now a report from CBS that the first choice for Lane Kiffin was Florida, and he has some interesting ties there. He married the daughter of John Reeves. John Reeves was the quarterback at Florida after Steve Spurrier. Wasn't quite the level that Spurrier was, didn't win the Heisman Trophy, but he was a good quarterback at Florida and had a 5-6 year NFL career, started for the Eagles for a little while. And there is that tie there. And also, his father was connected to Florida. There was a lot there for him to like, and it was considered to be a better job, more resources available at Florida. But according to this report, his initial conversation with Scott Strickland did not go well. That would have happened, I guess, after the Egg Bowl, which was on Thursday. That did not go well, and that's when you heard on maybe a Sunday morning that Florida was pulling out, and it was either going to be LSU or staying in Oxford at Mississippi. But Florida was the best available job with the leverage to dictate some of his terms, but that Florida wanted a general manager with an NFL background who would not report directly to Kiffin. And that was kind of a deal breaker there. Like, no. I got to be calling the shots here. Strickland was considered to have a more buttoned-up personality. We know that Lane Kiffin does not have that. And in fact, this is the Strickland who is who again was the athletic director. He actually had his eye on Kiffin, according to this report, when he fired Billy Napier back on October 19th. So he was waiting basically 6 weeks to poach him when the season was over. Kiffin was well aware, though, by the time this rolled around on Sunday that he wasn't Strickland's cup of tea, so they agreed that they would not go forward on this. But while he was at Ole Miss, he was allowed to do what he wanted there. And I guess LSU is promising the same now. He's expected to make $91 million over 7 years. He's got performance-based bonuses coming, including $1 million for winning the national title. And he had the chutzpah to say yesterday, oh, yeah, I don't really know what the contract numbers are. Yeah, sure. Right. Exactly. But a big part of this drama, or a part of this drama, was Marty Smith, the intrepid reporter from ESPN, who managed to get an exclusive from Lane Kiffin before he hopped on the plane to Baton Rouge. And just as they were starting the interview, you see it's not set up in a studio or anything like that. You see Lane Kiffin standing there, and Marty Smith's all dressed up. He's got his nice sport jacket on and his tie, but it's what we call a stand-up interview. He's got the microphone. There's no what they call lavalier, which attaches to Kiffin's shirt when they sit down. Now, this was a back and forth with a stick microphone. Marty Smith huffing and puffing as he pulled up, and you hear at the beginning of the interview, Lane Kiffin say, well, that was pretty impressive. You drove around the fire trucks. Well, here's the backstory on that. This was Marty Smith telling the story of how he landed this exclusive interview yesterday on the Pat McAfee Show.
The Ole Miss meeting ends. A player comes out and yells, it's the Pete Golding era. So we're all like, oh, hell, okay. They've made Pete Golding. Is he the interim? Is he the full-time? What are we doing here? So we're all working our phones trying to figure that out. And then I get a text from Lane. And he goes, I'll do your interview right now. I'm like, awesome. Where? When? I'll do it. We'll go to your house. We'll go to the moon. We'll go to the airport. And there had been a lot of information coming in that 2 LSU planes were landing at the Oxford airport in just an hour or so, hour or 90 minutes. And I was still waiting to get this information from him on when we might do this. Nothing. Crickets. So I look at my guys and I'm like, boys, we're going to the airport. Like my journalism antenna went up. I'm like, we're going to the airport. So we go to the airport and we wait and we wait. And it was cold as hell. Cold. And then I get a note from him and he's like, we're on the way. Well, I knew, all of you guys are big private jet guys.
Whoa.
So I know you guys know this.
Whoa. Don't be giving away. It is very nice.
I knew that given the scene, which was bedlam, I mean, the people showed out at the Oxford airport ready to tell my man Kiffin that he's number one.
Thank you. Yeah,
and
thank you, Lane.
I knew they were going to drive him straight onto the tarmac. So I'm trying to figure out how to get on the tarmac when I know that's against the law. You can't just walk out there. So I'm like, dude, where are they taking you? So he tells me this area, right? I'm not going to disclose the area, but I did know that it wasn't where I was. So I yell at my crew. I'm like, come on, boys, let's go. And I had been given at the Birmingham airport Thanksgiving night this conversion van.
Yeah.
Now, y'all, this ain't no minivan.
No.
This is like a 16-person.
Oh, yeah.
It's like driving a loaf of bread. And I'm going to tell you something now. I've been getting my balls busted constantly about that by everybody in the world for driving that loaf of bread. But you know what? God is so good.
Yes, he is.
If I didn't have that van in that chaotic moment where we're running to get Lane Kiffin, there's no way I can fit my whole crew, all the cameras, all the gear in one vehicle. But I had the loaf of bread. All right, so we all get in the loaf of bread, and Lane is basically giving me the play-by-play on where he is, and we're wheeling this van.
That's right.
And we take a left, and when we take a left off this highway, there is all these fire trucks that have blocked off the road.
Oh, no.
There's firemen blocking the road. Well, I said, to hell with it. We're Bo-Duking this thing.
Hell yeah.
What?
So there's a field that I drove around the barricade, through all of this farm equipment. The van's bottoming out. We're bombing this thing through ditches, over the hill and through the woods to this road. And then I mapped this van all the way up on top of the hill to the tarmac area. And there he stood, laughing his ass off. So he saw the whole thing.
I'll give you an interview.
And he's on the phone, and he's like, bro, you really are Scooby-Doo. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
Can't you just hear like the Dukes of Hazzard music in the background when he's driving this conversion van through the field and bottoming out in the ditches? I mean, some of this is maybe standard for people who land exclusives, maybe not like this, but there are things that you have to do. The movie that changed the world of journalism schools, same year I graduated high school, All the President's Men. You see them, and now obviously the technology has changed, but they're in the Library of Congress going through card after card after card to try and find sources on this. You see Bob Woodward with a woman drinking, or maybe it was Carl Bernstein, whichever character it was, I forget, but drinking gallons of coffee, trying to get information out of her, and not having to go to the bathroom, or having to go to the bathroom and not doing it. So there are things that you have to go through in that, but that's just another level of the craziness of this story. That's why I say somebody's got to make it into a mini-series like Succession, because it has so many elements of it, including the governor's involvement in this, where you had, the call that took place with Kiffin, and, it's sort of like, what it reminded me of? It was the movie Friday Night Lights, where Billy Bob Thornton is going from place to place and at the grocery store, wherever he happens to be. And all the fans of Permian Basin are saying, we're going to win the state, right? We're going to win the state. Well, we're sure going to try. He said, no, Coach, you're going to win the state. And so that's sort of the feel of Lane Kiffin going to LSU. Well, you went 11-1 at Ole Miss, so coming here, you're going to win the national championship, right? I mean, that's we had old Coach Orgeron. He won himself a national championship, so you ought to be able to win a bunch of them. So you're going to win, right? And he plays right into it because he's that kind of character. It's amazing. It's real life, but it's got a lot of drama to it. 40 years ago today, Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka almost, or maybe did, it's urban legend as to what happened, but the one loss that the 85 Bears had took place on this day in 1985, and it didn't sit well at halftime between head coach and defensive coordinator. We'll go through that story and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Bram is coming up at 11 o'clock. I think we can safely say that we will never see another undefeated team in the NFL, especially with the schedule now going to 17 games. I think it's going to be 18 within the next few years. Eventually it's going to get to 20. It's crazy, but that's probably what's going to happen. They'll do away with the exhibition season and just make it a 20-game regular season. We've had a team come close. We had the 2007 Patriots, who had an undefeated regular season, won 2 playoff games, and were shooting for 19-0. But David Tyree and the helmet catch prevented them from the perfect season. They would be celebrated as the greatest team of all time without question, and they may still be. But the Giants had the answer that day, and they have a blemish on their record, which unfortunately for them was the Super Bowl. The other team that really had a shot at this, and this is when the schedule was also 16 games, was the 85 Bears. They were awesome. They beat teams before they got on the field because they just had such an intimidating defense. It was incredible how good they were. Offensively, they were good. They had weapons like Willie Gault, great wide receiver, and Walter Payton, arguably the greatest football player of all time, as Mike Ditka later called him, and one of the greatest running backs who ever played. The offensive line was good. They were a good football team. Jim McMahon, not a Hall of Fame quarterback, but good and tough and fit the persona of those Bears. And without what happened 40 years ago tonight, they would have been an undefeated team. And where does it end? Why, it ends at the site of the home games for those 72 Dolphins still playing in the Orange Bowl. And they like to get in your face when you get close. Like, I remember being at the Super Bowl for that 2007 season when the Patriots were going for 19-0, and guys like Mercury Morris and Bob Greasy and people like that were making the rounds on what we call Radio Row, talking to radio stations. And Mercury Morris was the most vocal. He said, "Well, they're at my front door right now, but they're not in my kitchen yet, and I want to see them there." And sure enough, they came up short, and they all toasted themselves with champagne. And the Dolphins, to this day, 53 years later, remain the only undefeated team, which they closed out with a victory over the Washington Redskins, 14-7. And so they're there in Miami on this night 40 years ago as the Bears come in there 12-0 and looking like they are just going to beat everybody to death. They're just stomping on people. And as Don Shula said, he said that was the best half of football I've ever been around. This is the all-time winningest coach. And they led 31-10 at halftime over the Bears. 31 points against the Chicago Bears, the 85 Bears in the first half. Are you kidding me? And as they went into the dressing room, there is the question of whether or not Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka got into a fist fight. Buddy is gone. Ditka's still around. I heard he's not doing too well. We may never get the full story on this, but there was bad blood between these two. Even though Ditka was the head coach and Buddy Ryan was the defensive coordinator, they did not like each other, as Buddy later recounted, and wasn't shy about telling people about it.
Well, I always try to tell the truth. That's the way I don't have to worry about what I've said. And I don't think that's always the case with a lot of people. And they'll say one thing to a player's back, and they'll say another one to his face. Well, I never operated out of that. Whatever I have to say to them, I say it to their face, and they understand that.
You and Ditka, do you think maybe the fact you didn't get along was you were too much alike?
Oh, I hope not. I think Mike took a job because he wanted a head job, and, he had to accept me. There's no question. Mr. Hallis already hired me. I hired my defensive coaches. I was a defensive coach. I tried to be nice and do the things the way they're supposed to be done, but I think Mike had a hard time adjusting. I think now that he's matured, that he doesn't have that problem anymore. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, well, they famously chafed at each other, let's put it that way. And so, again, 40 years ago tonight, the Bears trying to complete an undefeated season. And this is all part of the story of the Super Bowl shuffle because they recorded it the next day after they wound up losing to the Dolphins. They scored a couple of touchdowns in the second half, but lost 38-24. That was the game that people look at and go, wow, if that didn't happen, maybe they would have been the undefeated team. But they're down 31-10 at the half. And as was recounted in that great series, America's Game, this was Mike Singletary recounting how things went bad that night in Miami.
Well, needless to say, there was something different about that game. And there were some things happened that night that were really strange. I mean, balls ricocheting off guys' heads and flying in the receiver's hands, and you couldn't buy a break. It was like a nightmare when something is happening and you're in the middle of it and you're thinking, this can't be happening. Please let this be a dream.
In their previous 6 games, the Bears had allowed just 29 total points. The Dolphins had 31 by halftime.
Coach Ditka comes in and says, hey, you guys better make something happen over there. And, of course, Buddy had his words to say to Coach Ditka about, hey, I'm doing this over here. I'm handling this over here.
I think I said, put the damn nickel in it and quit being so damn stubborn and stuff like that. And then we almost got in a fight, that's all.
And there might have been a swing or two. I didn't see it, so. But there was a lot of yelling in the back room.
Pushing, shoving, players jumped in the way of it, and that was about it. And, I haven't gotten a Christmas card from him since.
When that game was over, we knew that, wow, what a wake-up call that was. No longer were we going to be undefeated, but we still had a chance to achieve our dream. We came back together with a renewed focus, and we kept that focus all the way to the Super Bowl.
I think they would have won that Super Bowl if they won that game, but they did not. And on that night, as great as their defense was, it wasn't the best defense on the field because the Dolphins finished with 3 interceptions, 6 sacks, blocked a punt, and just never let the Bears offense get going despite the 24 points. And Mark Clayton, one of the great receivers that Dan Marino, Clayton and Duper, that duo that he had during that era, Clayton stood in front of his locker after the game, lit up a cigar, took a long puff, and said, if we played them 10 times, they might have beaten us 9 of those 10 times, but not tonight. This was our night. This was our time. So that's all a part of the story. And they went on to just, clobber everybody after that. And they blitzed through the playoffs. The Rams, that was a complete mismatch. They beat the Giants in the wind at Soldier Field. Sean Landeta, remember whiffing on a punt because the wind blew it off as it was trying to punt it. I mean, it was just devastating. And then what they did to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, even though the Patriots scored first, 46-10 doesn't tell the story. That should have been a shutout. And the regret that the players had, because I remember being in the locker room, they were upset that Walter Payton didn't get in the end zone. And by the way, I did watch the Mike Singletary documentary on the making of the Super Bowl Shuffle video. Disappointing. It's on HBO if you want to watch it. It's about 40 minutes. And it was very pedestrian, I thought. You need to find out new things in these kind of documentaries. And I watch them all the time. Most of them I like. This one I just thought was meh. Could have done a much better job with that. And then finally this surprises me. Matt Lauer, who's almost 68 years old, has been off TV for 8 years, wants back. A source tells People magazine that Matt Lauer is still angry with the way he was treated by the industry and people he thought were his friends. Remember, this is the story of this was really the beginning of the Me Too movement, and the report that Matt Lauer had a button on his desk in which he could lock the door from behind the desk to keep a woman in the office if he wanted to. And some of the things he said, from what I read, he deserved to be fired and he deserved to have the end of his career. And they said in the last 8 years he's been focusing on being a good father. Good for him, but his kids are grown, 24, 22, and 18. So I don't know how much fathering he does. But here's the deal. He's been off TV for 8 years. He's 68 years old. People forget about you. People move on. And, if Matt Lauer wants to come back and somebody really wants him, okay, then hire him. But I don't think that there's going to be any great – in fact, there'll be protests about it. But I don't think there's been a clamor for, oh, boy, we really miss Matt Lauer on TV. No. The world moves on. People forget about you. And Matt Lauer is a villainous character, and I don't think there's anybody in America who says, God, I really miss watching Matt Lauer on the Today Show. No. Too bad. You made your mistake. You made your bed. Go lie in it. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.